Traditional assessments focused on how well students were able to absorb information and prove they did by spitting it back out again to prove that they absorbed it in the first place. This approach to assessment is referred to as the teacher-centered approach. Courses focused mainly on the content of the course, so teachers decided what content they were going to include in their course. They determined how they were going to teach that content, and they also determined how best to assess it. This has been criticized as it is difficult for teachers to determine precisely what students are supposed to be able to do at the end of the course, according to Gosling and Moon, 2001. This course gave rise to the outcome-based approach or student-centered approach to lesson planning, execution, and assessment. Learning outcomes are identified based on what students should be able to do at the end of the period of learning. The SCI approach calls for student engagement, immersion, and personal responsibility. Instructors are still relied upon in the course, but more as coaches working the sidelines or mentors. Student self-reliance is promoted through a variety of action-oriented instructional formats that either replace, support traditional lectures, according to Felder, Brent, 1996. According to Felder and Brent, open-ended problem-solving required critical and creative thinking. It required role-playing and participation in simulated situations. It required non-traditional writing assignments and collaborative team projects. Individual self-paced assignments, community engagement, service learning assignments were also a part of this. The question of what is a learning outcome can differ depending on the source of material. They differ from learning objectives in that they are based on the accomplishments of the student and not the intentions of the teacher. Learning outcomes may focus on what the student is expected to be able to do at the end of the learning period. What students should acquire in terms of knowledge, skills, and attitudes. Learning outcomes in student-centered learning fit into three possible domains. These are thinking, knowledge, the cognitive domain, doing skills, the psychomotor domain, and feelings and attitudes, the affective domain. Bloom in 1956 devised a classification of the cognitive domain that consisted of 6 levels arranged in a hierarchy. The 6 levels are knowledge, understanding, comprehension, application, evaluation, and analysis and synthesis. Bloom's taxonomy is regularly used for writing learning outcomes because it provides a helpful list of verbs. However, the list of verbs is restricted, says Kennedy, 2008. According to Anderson and Crethwell, 2001, the cognitive domains in Bloom's taxonomy should be reordered. They reordered them into the knowledge dimension and the cognitive process dimension. The knowledge dimension consists of factual knowledge, or knowledge of discrete, isolated, and specific content elements, conceptual knowledge, or knowledge of organizing basic elements to form a larger functioning structure, procedural knowledge, or knowledge of procedure method for doing something, and metacognitive knowledge, knowledge about cognition in general, as well as awareness of and knowledge of one's own cognition. The cognitive process dimension consists of a comprehensive set of classifications of cognitive processes. These are remembering, understanding, applying, analyzing, evaluating, and creating, according to Anderson and Crethwell, 2001. According to Woods, 1994, students forced to take major responsibility for their own learning can go through some of the same steps that psychologists refer to as the grief process. This is something that's experienced by individuals suffering from trauma and grief. These include shock, denial, strong emotion, resistance and withdrawal, surrender and acceptance, struggle and exploration, return of confidence, and finally
created using Powtoon.